Well, welcome, Jordan.
Thank you.
And
Nice to be here.
yeah, what a great delight and honor to have my son, Dr. Jordan Gabriels, with me today. And thank you for taking the time. And I want to engage around a project that our acceptance and commitment students will be doing. Is a values project of 10 weeks where they engage with experimenting what it's like to live their values. And I was inspired by your work in this area. And it's just how our roles have reversed and changed. It's kind of amusing. And I want to say that you are an inspiration to me now. And
As are you to me, so thank you.
thank you. Oh, well, that's very kind of you. So I've been really struck, incredibly impressed by how your life has evolved and shaped over time. And it's very intentional. There's a deliberate element to all that you do. And to some extent it would be great to capture that today. So maybe if you could identify what are these that set you on this course. What was the motivation that prompted you to go in this direction of living a valued life?
And I think we chatted a bit about this before we started, but to me a valued life means when I think of values, I think of what is important to me and what does the best case scenario of life look like to me. So I guess naturally most of my life has been trying to be living a values-driven life, but it's really in the last probably 3 or 4 years that I've been a lot more focused and intentional about it compared to my former self and probably the average person. And I think the catalyst for that process was an exercise I did with myself in a Neuro board. And so Neuro is a piece of software that is what's called an infinite canvas. So it's like a giant whiteboard. And effectively I started by taking all of the information that I could about myself, so the outcome of personality assessments, writing down my hopes, dreams and aspirations. And I think a key component of it was I did Jordan Peterson's future authoring program.
Yes.
And so effectively that was kind of the starting point. But then over time I narrowed and kind of did this exercise of synthesizing what's there into a really focused set of a clear picture of what my perfect life looks like.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I were to pick up on something important that you said, it's continuing to narrow and going from broad to a specific focus.
Yeah, totally. And I think a huge part of why I did that and why I think it's important in terms of the narrowing bit is because there is a finite amount of time and energy that you have.
Yeah.
And I think a huge trap is that I guess I've run into and I see other people run into is trying to do everything, and in the course of trying to do everything, doing nothing well.
Yeah, and that's something that you've challenged me on numerous occasions. And maybe we can revisit this. Let's hold that. But if at this point we can dive into some of your goals, and let's talk specifically. And I'm gonna and thank you for allowing us to share your 2024 goals.
Sure.
And these goals, and if I can clarify, and you correct me if I have this, if I'm understanding this correctly, is these are stepping stones towards the kind of life that you want to live.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is taking you in the direction of what really matters to you. And so there's 4 areas that we look at in this PowerPoint, and it sort of starts with these 4 domains: physical health, creative impact, professional impact, and relationship health. So let's have a quick look at, and I may just, rather than dive in deeply, we may pause at certain points, but just to give our audience an overview, let's start with some of these specific domains.
Try the down arrow.
go. We're in business.
There you go.
So let's look in the first instance at health and fitness. So maybe if you could just talk to that slide, and just tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So I guess if I start with the why, I guess the broad idea is that my aspiration is to have a body that affords me the life that I want to live. So I think having a healthy and strong body is a goal in and of itself that's important to me, but it also allows me to be the husband that I want to be, eventually the father I want to be, and the grandfather I want to be. I think if I really stretch it back, I think one of the people I most admire was my grandfather. And I have this distinct memory of...
Can I just pause for a moment? That is very disappointing. I expected you to say that is me.
Well, I'll follow up this story with something that relates to you. So I have this distinct memory of my grandfather always doing this challenge of piling as many grandchildren as possible onto his back while doing push-ups. And sitting, if you can imagine it, just 5 small kids sitting on his back as he's just pumping out push-ups, and everyone in the room counting 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's one of the most exhilarating and exciting memories to me. And I think I just thought it was so impressive and so cool that he had the strength and vitality to not only get on the floor and play with his grandkids, but also it was just impressive and cool. I will say I have similar memories of going to the gym with you, and Dad introduced me to weights training, and I can remember struggling to push a bar with no weights on it off my chest, and you were patient and kind, and so that they're just formative memories that shape why this is important to me.
Yeah, wow. I like the one point there that says to have the energy to play with and hopefully wear out kids. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that just gives us a nice, and there's some specifics, and hopefully without going into any detail, we just invite our audience to have a look at those factors and give some insights to what is going to be helpful for students as they consider designing their focus and then the planned action that they're going to take. So we, in acceptance and commitment, we work with values, and then we work with committed action. So what steps are we going to take towards the realization of our values? So that really is a marvelous example. So move to the next slide, and that is creative goals. So maybe while I will invite our audience to have a look and get some idea of the details, maybe if you can just give us a general snapshot, an overview of what you're wanting and where you're heading in that goal.
Yeah. I think a core part of my identity and what's important to me is being what I call a builder and a creator. And so I guess the challenge is that I have a day job, I am a husband, I have parents, I have a whole bunch of aspects of life. So you never have the time or energy to do that. So what this is doing is sort of saying, breaking down that idea of being a builder and a creator, making it very specific to what that would mean, what I can do each week, and then kind of articulating a plan of actions that I can execute on no matter how I feel. And so my goal is to produce 52 pieces this year, 52 pieces of public content. I actually had the thought in the back of my mind, maybe this interview can be one of those 52 pieces of public content. And my goal is to, capture the big ideas and creative projects that I have in a way that I can share it with the world. And I so value and appreciate content that other people create, and whether that's podcasts, YouTube videos, blog posts, custom GPTs, all things like this. And so I want to contribute to that world and be a part of producing the content that other people value.
Wow, that is really noble. Moving to the next one is professional professional goals.
Yeah.
And so again, working 2 hours each week, that's a big commitment.
Yeah, it is. I guess my goal here is I build I have built with a dear friend of mine, Campbell, a guide to overcoming procrastination for good, based on cognitive behavioral therapy. It's called Doer. I'll put the little plug out there. You can download it from the Apple Store or Google Play. But yeah, this is a passion project and I guess a business project where we're aiming to build a product that by mid-year will hopefully generate $2,000 of monthly recurring revenue. We work on it 2 hours every morning before we go into work. So we arrive at a cafe outside of our office. We sit down in that cafe, we have a goal for each day, and we work for 2 hours before we start our day job. And many days I don't feel like doing it, but I guess I value fulfillment over enjoyment, and this is very fulfilling.
Yeah. That raises a really, really important point, that it's going to cost us something to live the kind of life that we want. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that you identify there's some days that the reality is, while you're passionate about it, there's just some days that's the last thing you feel like doing. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's an element of delayed gratification that is such an important principle, mm-hmm. that when we set about undertaking these important projects of the kind of life that we want to live, it's about saying no to certain things. And a lot of times it's no to good things, mm-hmm. In service of what matters to us. Mm-hmm. So maybe if you can just talk to that, what has inspired you to be disciplined in that space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the crux of it comes back to a sentence I said earlier, which is like, I aspire for fulfillment as opposed to happiness. I think like present moment happiness is very fleeting. And secondly, something I kind of believe is you don't need to, in order to behave in a values-driven way, you don't need to feel like behaving in a values-driven way.
Yeah. Can I just pause there? So that's that kind of idea. I think it was Russ Harris that said it's like looking at your values is like orienting yourself towards the North Star. Mm-hmm. It's always there, but it's setting your gaze on that North Star, mm-hmm. and moving in the direction of the North Star. Really, really powerful, and a great illustration of what you're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And so I guess on that premise of like given that you want to behave in service of your long-term values, but the reality is I'm not going to feel like doing that very often, and we can probably get into this in a bit, I've set a whole surrounding infrastructure around my life that forces me to behave in a values-driven way regardless of how I feel.
Yeah. So it seems like wow, that structure that is you've invested a lot of time is the tracks on which you run.
Totally.
And because it's been well established, on those days when you don't feel like committing those 2 hours to that, showing up to that cafe or to that coffee shop to work on your professional goal, the tracks are there. Mm-hmm. And that is an invitation, that is a reminder, that is a habit that draws you to that task. Mm-hmm. It's sort of, you've cultivated a habit.
Yeah. And maybe I can unpack what the tracks are specifically, what does that mean? I think the reason that you have this slide deck is because I have over time formulated an accountability group which includes about 20 of my close family and friends. And at the start of each year, I send them a slide deck, which is this, that summarizes my goals for the year. And the crucial bit is I say every month, at the last of every month, I'm going to send you an update that I've pre-committed to on how I've progressed on these goals. And the next most crucial step that I do is I pre-schedule the emails at the start of the year. So on the last day of every month, those people, whether I feel like it or not, are going to get an email that says, here's my update for the month. And I instruct them to say, if you receive this email and it has a link to my update deck and you get in there and you don't see the update, can you call me, email me, make sure that I stick on this? Like, this is very, very important to me. Please hold me accountable. And so I know that that's going out at the end of every month. And so every day that I wake up, I know that at the end of the month, the people that I aspire to win their kind of respect are going to receive this. So I need to get out of bed, go to the cafe, do the things like lift the weights, like do the things that align with my values, so that they can sort of see my progress. And I appreciate that everyone has different drivers for what motivates them. But for me, accountability to those people I respect is the train tracks that keeps me living in a values-driven way.
Wow, that's really, really so powerful. Thank you. And I wonder whether we can move now to the next one, and that is relationship goal. And I find this one particularly inspirational because there's some really, really big tasks that you've set yourself here. And maybe let me just identify just a couple. So you're talking about you and Steph, and you've just recently married, and you say our relationship is the primary variable that will determine our quality of life. A healthy relationship will allow us to have a fulfilled and less stressful life. Wow.
Yeah, it's very true. I think Steph, my wife, I probably spend 6 hours of every day together. Every major decision of my life will be made with her. She's kind of the anchor of my entire life. So the health of that relationship determines every other aspect of my life.
Yes.
So this is like probably the key relationship that will determine the quality of my life.
Marvelous. So I'm just leaving that slide up as I have with all the others, so that again, as you prepare students for your assessment, is have a look at these, how this has been mapped out, and I trust that it serves as a source of inspiration for you. But I'd like to talk to just a few more points, and one of those is, and I should add that one of the greatest joys was earlier this year, or last year actually. Last year, was had the opportunity to perform your wedding ceremony, and I want to say that was such a joy, because even the wedding was so deliberate, and this is what I love about the kind of life that you live in, is because every decision that you make seems so calculated and intentional. And the whole idea that you and Steph, the way that you went about planning your wedding was with the goal, what really matters to us. People matter to us. Our friends, our family matter to us. And you pulled off this beautiful affair where it was one of the great days of my life. And I heard people say, so Bradley, your brother, my eldest son, said, I haven't had so much fun as far back as I can remember at the wedding, because it was all about connection, and that came out of living again a valued life. But let me turn attention now to I don't know whether there's anything that you want to say on that before we leave that point.
No, I agree. It was the most special day of my life. I was honoured that you could officiate the ceremony, and my brother and my sister could, and everyone that I know could play a part in the day. I guess it's like the kind of like the cherry on top of the life that I've lived to this point. So,
beautiful.
Yeah.
And what was really classic is I'm black, and it's sort of an expectation that I've got the moves right.
Yeah. It doesn't.
Yep. Just no rhythm.
Yeah. That is proof of an incorrect stereotype. Not all black people can dance.
But that was just one of the highlights, was watching all the grandkids just lose, that stayed inhibition to move.
Yeah.
And, I was moving awkwardly. Can't say that you were much different to me.
Yeah. I will say, actually, it's interesting you mentioned this, because I am generally a little awkward in this, like with these public displays of affection and dancing and all of this. But I just like, I had a speech with myself, I suppose, before the wedding to just sort of instruct myself to give in to the day. And it's one of the rare instances of my life where I completely gave in to the day and did all of these public displays of affection and was silly and danced. And I aspire to be more like that in my day-to-day life.
You know, but I think that raises something else that we don't necessarily have time to, but maybe it's something that we can revisit. This is something else that I think we both had made a commitment to, and that is pushing into our discomfort and accepting that uncomfortable feelings is an inevitable part of what it is to be human, but not allowing those to serve as a barrier.
Totally, yeah, and that was true on that day.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, here's another one. A strong relationship will help us achieve other life goals, kids, professional accomplishments, and financial stability. So again, you can see the future orientation of this is even in what the steps that you're taking today. It's part of a bigger picture. It's towards something beyond just today. And that's the feature, sort of laced throughout this beautiful document that you've produced. Yeah, so maybe we can leave the PowerPoint now. And is there any advice that you would give to students as they set out on this journey, as they stand on the cusp of the experiment? Do you want to say anything to them? So let me just reiterate. They're going to be identifying values. They're going to be choosing some values to make a focus over 10 weeks. It's not a long period of time, but it's my hope that something will be a catalyst for transformation. And it will propel them and move them towards the best versions of themselves. And I mean, I'm not trying to be negating in saying what I'm saying there, because I mean, maybe they are living their best life. But I think it's a continual journey to press towards what is important.
Yeah, so I guess there's like probably different areas I could go with advice, but maybe one thing I'll anchor on is this idea that with many projects, it's like the idea and like the sort of the first, I guess the idea is 10% of the effort, and 90% of the effort is like actually executing it.
Yeah.
And at the start of any project, whether it's like self-improvement, anything, you have a huge amount of energy. And you imagine that this future version of yourself is going to have the equivalent amount of energy than you do at the start. And I guarantee that you won't. And so what can you do with that information is, one, it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but make your goals smaller. Have much less goals. I think there's a lot that you walk through on these slides. I will say I built up to that over time, but I think like I started with like the first year, I just had like one very small goal, and then I kind of built on top of that. But less goals, smaller goals. And then the second piece of advice I would have is, this is very tactical in terms of the implementation of how do you actually follow through on your kind of values-driven goals. The second thing is a daily anchor habit. So I have a daily anchor habit, which is I have a single Google document that I have a template that I fill out every single day. And that template...
So can I just pause and just identify? So that is really, you are beholden to that. That keeps you accountable.
That's right.
And would it be fair to say also that refocuses you every day?
That's right. It serves to remind me of what I'm doing and why, and it serves to make sure that every single day, no matter what, I make progress towards a value-driven life. I will say that sometimes I spend 2 minutes on that document, sometimes I spend 5 hours on that document. but I never spend 0 minutes on that document. And I think, that I can use that as an anchor to come back to every single day. And it's a template there. I follow the prompts to go through and execute on what's on these goals here. And I think daily to me is really important. It's like brushing your teeth. I think many people have the sensation of like, if you don't brush your teeth before bed, you can't sleep. Like that Google document has the equivalent feeling to me. It's like, if I don't do it before bed, I can't sleep. And if you could get your anchor habit to that level of you can't do it before you can sleep, you have like a superpower in life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's sage advice. Maybe moving towards ending this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You've watched me over the years. You've
Mm-hmm.
learned from my failings, I would imagine.
Somewhat. Yeah.
And I think if I were to self-assess, one of my primary failings is doing too much. And I think a classic example is exercising. Is go when I can and kill myself when I do go.
Correct.
And so you've observed all of that.
Yeah.
What do you make of all of that?
It's true. I would say maybe one thing I've learned from you is not to treat life like a sprint. I think in many ways, you have a huge amount of energy, of activation energy. But that energy is a curse as well.
Yeah.
Because it means that when you see a goal, then you imagine a future version of yourself that can squat a huge amount of weight or write a book or something. And then you go at it very hard. But as with many of these things, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so I guess I've seen you do that in some regards. And so I've learned from it, and I've learned to kind of scale back and then think about how do I pace myself across all 42 kilometers as opposed to sprinting the first 100 meters.
Well, Jordan, it's been a delight. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking the time. And I trust that the students benefit from this exchange.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for drawing the information out of me.
My pleasure.